In 1718, North Carolina was a colony of Great Britain, part of its growing overseas empire. England, France, and Spain had all claimed huge territories of land in the Western Hemisphere and would be competing for land and resources in a mercantilist economy reliant on colonial profits. As a result, they fought a series of wars over land in the New World, including the long Queen Anne's War, 1702 to 1713. This war would not settle questions of colonial power in the New World, but it would unleash men known as privateers onto the waters of the Caribbean Sea and Atlantic Ocean. Privateers were legal pirates. They had a letter of marque from the monarch of their country that authorized them to raid the vessels of rival powers. When the war ended, many privateers would continue their actions without that blank check and would become pirates outside the law. One of the most infamous examples was a man known by two pseudonyms, Edward Teach and Blackbeard. We don't precisely know where or when he was born, but he likely served as a privateer in Queen Anne's War before turning to piracy. While Blackbeard's career as a pirate captain likely lasted only 2 years, he gained a reputation as one of the most intimidating and fearsome pirates of the time. During his time on the Caribbean Sea, Blackbeard would gain a crew consisting of up to 400 men. He would cultivate an image of fear that helped him become a very successful pirate. A pirate feared by his targets would face less resistance when boarding a ship. It is unknown how many men Blackbeard may have killed, but we have records of his journeys from ship's logs and run-ins with the English colonies. Pirate crews attracted men from all levels of society. Blackbeard's men included wealthy ex-privateers, sailors from ships captured at sea, and people from the lowest classes of society, both black and white. Pirate ships often attracted people who had no place else to go. They served as an escape and a money-making enterprise. Pirate raids would be beneficial for both the captain and his crew. The crew would get shares of the loot, while the captain would add captured sailors to his numbers, enabling him to successfully raid more ships. If raids were infrequent or unprofitable, the captain could suddenly be faced with an angry crew. Blackbeard was known for his famous flagship. In late 1717, he captured a French slave ship known as La Concorde and rechristened it the fearsome Queen Anne's Revenge. Its namesake, the Queen herself, was dead. Her replacement, George I, was a German prince and was unpopular with many Catholics, Scotsmen, and pirates. Blackbeard may have been making a political statement with this name. In September 1717, England was frustrated by pirate activity in their Caribbean colonies. To incentivize the pirates to walk away from their profession, they offered the chance for a pardon. If a pirate declared loyalty to the English crown and never returned to pirating, he would never be arrested or put on trial for his crimes. Blackbeard decided to take this opportunity to sail to North Carolina and take the loyalty oath. In June 1718, after a tumultuous voyage in which he blockaded the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, beached the famous Queen Anne's Revenge at present-day Beaufort, North Carolina, and abandoned most of his men, he and about 30 others reached Bath, North Carolina, the colony's capital. After taking the loyalty oath, Blackbeard came to Ocracoke Island, where he would live much of his final 5 months. Ocracoke Island was a great place for Blackbeard to live as a semi-retired pirate. He anchored his vessel, the Adventure, between the Ocracoke Inlet and a natural freshwater well on land in what is now called Teach's Hole Channel. The inlet was one of the few paths in and out of the Pamlico Sound, necessary for ships entering mainland North Carolina. The Sound, however, was much shallower than the ocean, making it a good place for Blackbeard to maneuver his ship when being chased by a larger vessel. The colony of North Carolina was willing to shelter the pardoned pirate Blackbeard, but this did not prevent its neighbors from plotting his demise. Arguing that Blackbeard was still raiding vessels and therefore violating the terms of his pardon, The colonies of South Carolina and Virginia would both authorize raids into North Carolina in late 1718 to capture members of Blackbeard's crew. One of these raids, led by the British Royal Navy, would cost the pirate his life. About 60 Royal Navy men on 2 vessels, led by Lieutenant Robert Maynard, took a 5-day journey from Virginia to Ocracoke, approaching Blackbeard from the Sound side on November 22, 1718. While Blackbeard was cornered, his narrow channel worked to his benefit, as the Navy boats quickly ran aground on the inlet's dangerous sandbars. In the early morning hours, as a thick fog settled over the waters off Ocracoke Island, Blackbeard's ship, the Adventure, found itself face to face with 2 vessels of the British Royal Navy. Blackbeard, well aware of the British intentions, was resolute in his decision to resist. The tension between the ships broke with the thunderous roar of cannon fire. Blackbeard ordered his seasoned pirates to their guns, and the battle commenced with a fury. The heavy cannons aboard the Adventure began their deadly work, unleashing a barrage of iron and lead. The air was filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder, adding to the charged atmosphere. Under Blackbeard's command, the first volleys were fired, striking the HMS Pearl. The cannonballs tore through the ship's hull, causing it to take on water. Smoke from the blasts obscured the battlefield, reducing visibility to mere shadows. Amid this chaos, the pirates relentlessly continued their assault, determined to inflict as much damage as possible. The British forces responded in kind. The cannons of HMS Lyme erupted with a deafening roar, and all available guns aboard fired a deadly symphony towards Blackbeard's ship. The brief flare of the cannon blasts lit up the sky, followed by the devastating impact on the pirate vessel. The Adventure shuddered under the barrage, with wooden splinters and iron shards scattering in all directions. The British fire also targeted the ship's masts and sails, limiting its maneuverability. The exchange of cannon fire was a deadly dance of survival. The thunderous explosions echoed across the sea, as both sides sought to annihilate the other. The cries of Blackbeard's men rose above the tumult, and each shot from the ship's massive cannons sent deadly projectiles crashing into the British decks. Cannonballs shattered masts, punched holes in the hull, and occasionally splashed into the sea, mingling with the cries of the wounded and the roar of the waves. The British ships, determined to break the pirates' resistance, unleashed their full firepower. The guns of the HMS Pearl fired repeatedly, turning the deck of the Adventure into a hellish landscape. Amidst this chaos, Blackbeard stood firm, directing his crew and encouraging them to keep fighting. Yet, the destruction wrought by the British cannons could not be ignored. The Adventure's deck and sides bore gaping wounds, with many pirates injured or dead. In the fiercest moments of the battle, the cannon fire seemed unending. Both sides attacked with relentless determination. Despite the heavy damage, the British ships pressed their advantage, using superior firepower to push Blackbeard's crew to the brink. Each explosion lit up the darkened sky, casting an ominous glow over the sea as the fight raged on. Blackbeard, using every weapon at his disposal, unleashed a storm of death upon his adversaries. Yet, amidst the cacophony of cannon fire and explosions, a sense of uncertainty spread among the pirates. These moments of intense combat highlighted the imminent end of Blackbeard's piratical career. As the British pressed closer after their sustained cannonade, the battle shifted to an even more perilous close-quarters confrontation. Blackbeard, resolute to the end, faced the encroaching British with grim determination, as he and his crew were inexorably drawn towards the fateful conclusion. The pirate and his men took the opportunity to board the Jane, but would be in for a rude surprise. Lieutenant Maynard had kept many of his men below decks, disguising his true strength. When those men exploded out of the hull, they engaged the pirates in hand-to-hand combat. After a brief fight, Blackbeard was killed by a wound to the throat. The Navy sailors estimated that he took 5 pistol wounds and 20 stab wounds during the battle. Blackbeard's head was brought to Virginia and put on a pike at Hampton Roads, intended to serve as a warning to future pirates. 15 of his men, 9 of whom survived the battle, the other 6 were living in Bath at the time, were put on trial. 6 of them were executed. While many writers mark the end of the Golden Age of Piracy in the decade after Blackbeard's death, illegal activity and smuggling would be sources of tension between England and its North American colonies in the years leading up to the American Revolution. Blackbeard's death marked a significant turning point in the era of piracy in the Atlantic. On November 22, 1718, off the coast of Ocracoke Island, Blackbeard and his crew were cornered by the British Royal Navy. True to his fearless nature, Blackbeard was determined to resist until the very end. However, the British ships, under the command of Lieutenant Robert Maynard, employed superior tactics and firepower to subdue the pirate vessel. The battle culminated in Blackbeard being severely wounded and ultimately killed. His death was a major victory for the British government, as Blackbeard was one of the most feared and infamous pirates of the time. The end of Blackbeard's life was not just the death of a single pirate, but also a symbol of the broader decline of piracy in the Atlantic and Caribbean. The British Navy and other European powers had been working tirelessly to eliminate the threats posed by pirates who had long disrupted trade routes and endangered maritime safety. By the early 18th century, piracy had become a significant problem, jeopardizing both commerce and security at sea. The elimination of Blackbeard and other notorious pirates was seen as a crucial step toward addressing this issue. The British government made concerted efforts to neutralize pirates and secure the safety of maritime trade. The downfall of Blackbeard became one of the most prominent symbols of this struggle. His death accelerated the decline of piracy in the Atlantic, helping to reduce the threat of pirates and making trade routes safer. Blackbeard's demise marked the beginning of the end of the Golden Age of Piracy, signifying a new era in which the seas became increasingly secure for lawful commerce. As we conclude our journey into the final chapter of Blackbeard's storied life, the Battle of Ocracoke Island stands as a testament to the tumultuous era of piracy in the early 18th century. This fierce clash between Blackbeard and the Royal Navy marked the end of a notorious pirate who had terrorized the seas with his fearsome reputation and audacious exploits. On that fateful day in November 1718, Blackbeard and his crew found themselves outgunned and outnumbered by the determined British forces. The battle was brutal and bloody, showcasing the tenacity and desperation of men fighting for their lives and legacies. Despite his cunning and ferocity, Blackbeard was ultimately defeated, his reign of terror brought to an abrupt end. The aftermath of the Battle of Ocracoke Island reverberated across the Atlantic, signaling a turning point in the fight against piracy. Blackbeard's death was not just the fall of a pirate legend, it was a symbolic victory for the rule of law over the chaos that piracy represented. The Royal Navy's triumph sent a clear message to all who dared to defy the established order. Blackbeard's legacy, however, endures. His larger-than-life persona, dramatic final stand, and the myths that have grown around him continue to captivate the imagination of historians, storytellers, and adventurers alike. The Battle of Ocracoke Island remains a poignant reminder of a bygone era where the high seas were both a perilous frontier and a stage for grand exploits. Thank you for joining us on this voyage through history. If you enjoyed this documentary, please give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories from the past. Your support helps us bring history to life. Until next time, fair winds and following seas.